I'm Ron Womble, editor of the Morning Sun, and we're privileged today to kick off a series of conversation with newsmakers in our community with City Manager Daron Hall. So welcome, Daron.
Well, I'm honored to be your first guest, and hopefully you don't get canceled after this episode.
Well, we have control over that. So I think I'd like to begin the conversation with a little bit of background. I feel that a lot of us have known you for a long time, but remind us when you first came to Pittsburgh and how you got here.
Yeah, great. So 2011, went through Leadership Kansas. I was in Southwest Kansas, and there wasn't a lot of people out there, so I was selected as one of the few people that were out there. So we came through Pittsburgh as one of our stops and did the whole tour and really had a great time. And then I had a recruiter call me when I got back home about a month later and said, "Hey, Pittsburgh's looking for a city manager," and some people threw your name around. So applied and interviewed and was blessed to get a call back and came out for another interview, and we've been here ever since.
Okay, so it's probably changed a little bit since that first day that you rolled into town.
I remember my first day very well. I remember the interview process. I remember the long drive over here for the second interview. But yeah, I can remember walking into my office and seeing the name on the door, and thinking, okay, this is, you got to do right by these people. But I had a pretty clear direction from the commission at that time about what they wanted. They had just adopted their strategic plan, so it was like, hey, let's get this thing implemented and let's get some things moving. And so yeah, it all kind of was just ready, set up and ready to go when I got here.
So tell us a little bit about what is it exactly that a city manager does?
Well, for me, the first thing I did was I went to school a lot. I got an undergrad in political science. Got a graduate degree from Texas A&M, a master's in public administration. And there they had a chance to select what you wanted to do. People were in environmental science, some people were in hospital administration. I chose city management, and so got a pretty good background on budgeting and city management, and mainly decision making is what we focused on in grad school, is how to make decisions. You make a lot of them, you make them quick. And so really, when people ask what we do all day, I really describe it as probably three things. I try to have a strong team. So I think I've assembled a good team over the last 15 years, really proud of the work they do. And they have teams under them, and I think from the bottom to the top, we have a very strong organization. The other thing that we do is I try to remove barriers for people's work. So whether it's financial barriers or designs to solutions that we're trying to come up with, or just politics, having trouble in the community somewhere, try to make it easier for those department heads to get all their work done. And then the other thing that we really push is we're always going to be financially responsible, but the real promise is that we're going to have a safe environment. So anywhere I go, anything we do, we make sure that we're always talking about safety, that it's a priority, that people have the equipment they need to be safe. And part of that's having newer equipment. So that's always a challenge because there's always budget restrictions. And then the safety of the community, whatever business we're in, whether it's water, sewer, streets, parks, all of it is about providing a safe version of that for the people that live here. And so if you kind of cull it down to that, public service is really at the city level about public safety. And whatever we're doing, we're trying to do it so people can operate and live here in a safe manner.
So talk a little bit about your leadership style. How would you describe it?
Well, it changes every year because I get older. I'm sure I'll have it all figured out when I'm retired. But I like people. I like to empower people. I like to see people grow. We just got word today that our PIO that we hired 8 years ago has come all the way through the organization, and she's going to be heading over to the CDB over there to take over that. So it's fun to develop people and teams, and it's probably the most satisfying thing is to see people come into City Hall with an idea about, hey, I have this piece of land, or I have a property, I would like to do something with it, can you help us? And then years later, you're driving down the road and you see that business or that house, or maybe a place where there wasn't that, where there was a house and we had to tear it down. But just making things happen in the community for the community is probably the most enjoyable part of my job.
You mentioned housing. I think as long as I've been here, that's been one of those top issues that seems to come up again and again, specifically affordable housing or substandard housing. What are the kinds of issues that, I don't know if they're unique to Pittsburgh, but that the city faces in terms of its housing?
Well, fortunately, we kind of take our problems into two pots. One is the pots that it's happening all over the state, all over the country, and then the other ones are just things that are unique to Pittsburgh. Housing is one of those things that's happening all over the country, all over the state. It's very challenging. Post-pandemic things are very expensive, and people are struggling. Life is extremely expensive. So imagine just the groceries, let alone buying a house or a new house, and then you have to build a house with the new cost of materials. So we call it attainable housing, is kind of the term I like. It's not really affordable. That's kind of relative, but we have a desire to create houses that we need in Pittsburgh. And in Pittsburgh, that's everything from some very big, large, sprawling mansions to just starter homes for people that maybe are just a single parent or a young couple. And so we've come up with a couple of programs that I think we've been very fortunate. Like I said, we have a very smart staff, and they're very dedicated to finding solutions to problems. And one of the solutions that we came up last year was called the City Housing Incentive Program, where we've taken a pot of money that's not tax money, it's money that we received through another deal that was done well before I got here. And we're using that as the incentive. And if you build a home and you'll sell it to somebody that meets the threshold of, I think it's low to moderate income, then they will actually, at the closing, prove what their income level is, and then you can come back to the city and we'll give you a grant up to 10% of your costs, including buying the lot. And so that's a nice 10% incentive. So if you build a $187,000 house, you get a check for $18,700 when you're done. So that's immediate profit for somebody, and it also provides a home to somebody that really needs it. And then the more homes we have, I think there's 27 housing permits going on right now in Pittsburgh. It doesn't feel like it because we have a couple of big developments where there's a few houses going in, but we also have a lot of infill homes. So we've really tried to meet it head on. We've done a lot of studies over the last 5 to 7 years, housing studies. We've marketed strictly to developers. And as somebody said once, they're like, sometimes the developer that finishes the development isn't the one that started. The key is to get the momentum going. And we've seen that in a couple of places as well with Silverback. That's a good example of a lot of lots. There's more to build, but the people that are taking it over now are more local than the person that started it, and I think that'll provide a better outcome. But I think where we really need to focus on is just the starter homes, making sure that people don't, feel like that they can't afford a house, because home ownership is something that I think everybody deserves the right to be able to consider whether they want to do it or rent. That's up to them. But housing is a similar problem all over the state and probably all over the country the more that you look into it, and it's just because life is expensive.
A lot of folks have been talking recently about their property tax bills, the valuation going up. What's the city's role in all of that?
Well, we're a partner in the process, and we have an important role. There's really a couple of parts to your property tax. One is the valuation that the county sets for the entire county, and it includes the city of Pittsburgh. And that's what the basis is for everybody's individual property tax. And then we have a responsibility to not only keep the taxes as low as we can for people so they can afford to pay them and not get squeezed out of their home, but also provide services that are ever increasing. So it's really a tough juggling act. When I first got here, valuation went down every year. In 2008, the crash, the Great Recession hit, and our valuation went down $10 million. So we ate through our reserves trying to, because it's very hard to raise taxes during a depression or a recession. And so the commission chose not to. So we ate through our reserves. So when I got here 4 years later in 2012, we were pretty much running really thin on money. And then for the first 3 years I was here, the valuation continued to go down, which makes it really hard because the cost of things goes up. So we had a couple of increases. We had a $3 million increase, which is the piece that the city controls. The city can basically put our budget together and determine how much property tax we need to do it. Property tax is the second biggest revenue for us in the general fund behind the sales tax. So when you do that, you're looking at the valuation, and if it's going down every year and costs are going up, it's really hard to not raise that mill, but we did a pretty good job of not raising it. The last 13, 14 years, I think the mill has increased about 0.48, so like less than half a mill was the average, and that's with a couple of years we had to do 3 mill increases. So we try to keep the mill flat now, and that's been the policy of the commission the last 4 or 5 years. We just don't raise the mill, and then we just take the growth because the valuation has been growing. But I think this last year we saw that the valuation grew so much, and then when we set our mill rate, the expectation that would have been something, and then the valuation, we have so many incentives that we didn't take out the RIDs and the TIFs, so it actually went up even higher than the commission expected, and the county and the school district were in the same boat. So we spent a lot of time kind of explaining how it works and what we need to do. But property tax across the state has been a very high priority for the legislature and all the communities, and we're no different. You know, that's something that you want to keep as low as you can and still balance. You know, Pittsburgh's in a fortunate position where we aren't shrinking. So I do, until we get a clear mandate from the community, cutting services and reducing services that are supported from the general fund is very hard to do because mostly it's police and fire. But we've also been very fortunate with our growth. And on top of the property tax and sales tax in the general fund, we have like $500,000 of revenue this year that wasn't even budgeted that's going to go into the general fund, that are incentives coming off of some of the developments we have. So when you put that into the budget, there's no budget shortfall, but there's also an opportunity to give some property tax relief, which is really what I think the current commission is all about. They want to see that mill go down a couple of mills, and that's our job to make sure that they have the ability to do that and not really mess with the flow of the city, because the city's operating very well right now.
You mentioned the growth or the stabilization. Crawford County is the only county in southeast Kansas, actually, that has grown a little bit. We're seeing rural areas of the state, population really decline. What do you see as the future for Pittsburgh?
Well, I think Pittsburgh has, for whatever reason, become the hub of our region, which is saying a lot because we're at the corner of 4 states, and so there's a lot of competition from the other states as well. But we positioned ourselves to make sure that if you are in a smaller town and the tax base is dwindling because the population is leaving, that you don't have to move to Wichita or Topeka or Kansas City, but that you can stay in southeast Kansas. And if you can get to Pittsburgh, we're trying like heck to create well-paying jobs. I think we've created 2,000 jobs in the last 12 to 15 years, and most of that comes from expansions of all the, we have 4 industrial parks. They're basically full, and the businesses just keep, whether it's Apex Stages or whether it's Masonite or whether it's Atkinson, which is, they change names a lot, but they do the big electrical structures that sit on power plants and things like that. Those companies, Pitt Plastics, they continue to grow and they continue to expand. And so the more people and workers you get in your community, the more chance you have to keep the tax base stable and not have to increase it. But you also don't have that fear of losing that population, because there is a cliff coming with education. The school district, I think, is already down 100 students in USD 250, but of course the university is actually up maybe 100. And so we've tried to take the pressure off of the university enrollment. When I got here, everything was about what's the university's enrollment, and I said, that's really unfair to the university to have the pressure of keeping the local economy strong by their enrollment numbers. There were so many challenges anyway with enrollment. So we've just tried to do our part and be a good partner and maintain our population. Some people say, well, we're not growing. I'm like, well, mainly we're not losing, but we are growing. We'll continue to grow, and we want to be that destination so people can live in this region of the state, in this area of the 4 states, and have a place where they can get medical, where they can get a bite to eat, where they can get an education, and where they can find a good job, and mostly where they can find a place to live. Back to that housing.
That's always been sort of the discussion about, and it usually occurs in May when the kids are graduating and packing up and heading up to Johnson County. What are the keys to keeping young people or drawing young people to Pittsburgh?
Well, I think the first thing is jobs. You know, you want to have something for them to be able to do in the summer that's either going to lead to them getting their degree, that's an internship. We're basically custom manufacturing for the most part, but we do have the tech school. Pitt State has a school of construction. We have the research center. You know, I mean, we become a research university. But in the summer, you know, it's summer, and so the kids want to go hang out and go to the lake and work. So it's tough to keep them around. The main thing is a strong school will keep a good curriculum, but I think the best thing is give them something to do, and that's really hard to do when you think about strict recreation. I know when I was in school, I always went home every summer regardless because you just got to see family. But there are people that will stay. And I think if you drive around Pittsburgh in the summer now, there's actually traffic. It doesn't feel like we just rolled everything up. And there's a lot of events that, whether it's the Arts Council or just the city, this is the 150th anniversary of the city, so there's a lot of events planned for this year. We just try to give them something to do so maybe they can opt for hanging out here and working at even a fast food restaurant, whatever. It just gives them some money and then they can spend their time.
What about young families and graduates?
Young families and graduates are, you know, honestly, most of the decisions that we make about how to help the city help itself are about what do young families need. We've done a ton with the county and with the ARPA funds and with the private sector on you know, workforce development, which really comes down to daycare. You know, we have a workforce, but if a mother or father has to stay home with their kid, then because there's nowhere to put them during the day, but they can get a good, decent education to be safe, then they're losing part of our workforce. So having a place for a young mother to be able to put her kids and still have a good job that satisfies her and makes her part of the breadwinner, or even a father in that case. You know, there's plenty of men that are stay-at-home dads. That's like our number one thing. The safe park system, a safe place to walk. Those have always been priorities of ours because people want to get outside, they want to see their neighbors, and they want to walk along and not trip over a broken curb or have a car swoop them off into the ditch like they used to do on South Rouse. That's all I ever heard about was people jumping into ditches. But real proud of our park system. We've added a lot to the golf course. We've rebuilt the mini golf course. We've added pickleball. You know, we're probably not big enough to have a sky zone or a bounce. You know, there's certain things in Joplin and other communities. A top golf, but we do have a very nice golf course now. We have a driving range, and we have the things that we think can make people not just feel like they completely missed out if they do spend the summer here. But the young families, the park system, a good paying job, a decent place to live, a safe community. That's really what we try to strive for because we want to keep attracting those people to stay here or come back if they do leave.
So thinking back to when you first came, think about some of the top accomplishments that you can come up with, maybe 3 or so.
Well, it really comes down to probably people. We've been blessed at the city with good employees. There's a seriously intelligent, committed, professional management team. You know, it kind of starts there with people that could probably live wherever they wanted to, but they choose to live in Pittsburgh. They're not trapped here. And then all the people that work at the city, you know, we try to leave them alone because nobody really wants to be hawked by their boss or their boss's boss and watch them work. But I think they understand that we value them. We've really tried to pay them better than when I got here. It was a tough way to pay people because the budget was going down. I think we've averaged 3.5% raises over the years. So the people within the organization is a big part of it, but the people outside of the organization, the partners that we've been able to create, whether it's the hospital, the university, all the industry, the retailers, those people have been very open-minded and very friendly with their wallet. There's a lot of philanthropy that happens in this town. People ask, how have we done $800 million worth of stuff in a town this big? And I'm like, well, there's a list of people that want to make sure things happen in Pittsburgh, and when we need things, they make it happen. So we've been very blessed with that. And I think just the last thing is we have a suspiciously strong economy. I mean, all you ever hear when you leave Pittsburgh is the rest of the state is Southeast Kansas, and it's poor and it's unhealthy and people are struggling. And I'm like, I just think it's such a strong economy. If you look at our numbers, the sales tax last year, end of the year, up 5.6%. And yeah, inflation's 2.8 or 3 of that. But that's still strong growth. We have at least 4 brand new, Ulta is a brand new store. It's not just a new business, it's a brand new building. Five Below. You've got IHOP just opened up on the south side. You have downtown, I don't know how many, 200 plus either built or planned housing units going in. The university has a footprint down there now. The partnerships and the people are what drive the economy, and our economy is just strong. It weathered the pandemic extremely well. I think we're a little blessed there because it was hard to travel to a bigger city where a lot of people were spending. So, you start getting government checks and all of a sudden you can't really go shopping anywhere but locally, and all of a sudden, boom, it takes off here. So we've kind of seen that die down a little bit the last few years. But what you're seeing is a leveling out, and wages are up. We've made a very intensive effort to not only increase the wages for the 300 people that are at the city. We've done a pay study and made sure that we can retain them and that we're paying them enough to raise a family. The wages across the board are higher and higher, and I think that's something that tells people you can find a job here, you can't afford a place to live here now, and you can actually afford to go out and eat a couple times a week instead of cooking, and there's somewhere to go. So that's kind of that whole family approach to what do families want. They're pretty simple. They want a job, they want a place to rest their heads and raise their family, and we focus on those things every day. But I think the people here are probably the one thing that I think is just astounded me at how giving they are, how much they care about one another, and it's reflected in the economy and the partnerships that we have.
You mentioned the university's footprint down here. This is going to be an interesting summer. We have Kels and the Best opening in August. How's that going to change downtown?
Well, I know downtown is going to be a lot brighter, and there's going to be parking enforcement because there's some real challenges that come in with having that much down there. We always want to be, you can't go chalk tires anymore like they used to do in the day. That's illegal now. So we're trying to make sure that, the people understand that during classes there's going to be more people down here and there's going to be shuttles. But I think it's an exciting time for anybody that lives and operates down there. The students have a way of putting a little pep in your step when you're down there in the morning, and they're going to be in classes probably from 8 to noon, and the Best has been completely redone. And I know there's so many memories of people that have had receptions and got married and spent time in that Best hotel, and now to think that there's going to be people living in it, and then the downstairs you're going to have like the reading literacy center and all the things that should just make it as vibrant as ever. But we have a responsibility to put a lot more lighting in, to make it safe so it's very walkable even if it's at night, and that's something we've really focused on lately. And to make sure that there are, not tripping hazards all over, because we do have older infrastructure. But I think the challenges of parking and lighting and security are worth every bit of the activity that is going to be down there, and the ability to think, how many people are getting an education down there, how many people are getting the help they need with reading down there, how many people are going to eat in a business down there, and just enjoying their downtown, because every downtown is really the front porch of a community, regardless of the size. And ours is exceptional. When I got here, I was blown away at how much work had been done downtown. But to look at it now, those 4 buildings that were at the corner of 4th and Broadway and were boarded up and broken glass and kind of scary looking, they're all just alive, and they're full of people getting on with their lives, and it's an exciting time.
Still have some empty spots downtown. What do you see happening down here?
Well, we have to be careful because people for whatever reason are speculative real estate people. So some people with money, they buy real estate and hold on to it, and they want to cash it out at some point. But you also have the problem with vacant structures and what happens to those vacant structures. And a lot of times, like we're seeing at 616 North Broadway, the old Ramsey building, the city ended up having to make a decision: are we just going to watch it fall down, and knowing that we're going to have to clean it up at our cost anyway, and there's nobody to go after to recur those costs. So there's things like vacant building ordinances, where if a building's vacant, do we have the ability to go in once a year and just make sure it isn't falling down, and make sure the owner does know that they need to keep the water out of it. So those are things the commission's going to struggle with right now, but those are, one thing about Pittsburgh and America is working for the government. we just don't want to be in anybody's face. You know, it's America. People, it's like, you know, home free. It's freedom is a big deal here, but we also have a responsibility to taxpayers that if we're gonna have to spend $750,000 to clean up a building after it falls over, we need to make sure we get in there and make sure it doesn't fall over. And so we've done that with Ramsey. We've done that with a few other ones. The developers have really helped us with the big ones like Block 22 and Gorilla Rising. But there's always another building that's got an owner that doesn't really think it's all that bad, and we're scratching our heads going, man, don't let it fall to the city, because we've got a lot of things we want to do with our tax money, and taking care of somebody's building they didn't take care of is not very high on the priority, but we have to do it when we have to do it.
So the way I think about Pittsburgh, it's an interesting group of cities in this country about our size, with unique challenges and opportunities. What do you think, a city this size, what do you think the challenges are going to be in the years ahead, and what opportunities might there be?
Well, I think our biggest challenge is to keep attracting people and maintaining the people we have. I mean, most of the cities that are small and very small, you know, it's expensive to live in a rural community when you're the only one paying the property tax bill. So our goal is always to keep the taxes low. The first one would be to come up with other revenues to replace that property tax and keep it low, if not get rid of it completely. But the other thing is maintaining your population. People are drawn to people. So the more people we have here, the more jobs we have here. I think if you come into town, I don't know what the estimates are lately, but 21,000 of the last census to live here. There's probably 35,000 people here every day. This was one estimate I heard. It's hard to count that. But if you look around, you can tell we're a destination. There's people drive an hour and a half to work here. So that's amazing to me. But in Kansas City, I used to have to drive 45 minutes to work here. It's like 7. So that's one of the beauties of living in a small town. But I think that's kind of the biggest challenge for us, is to always have a product that's quality, that people won't feel forced to live here, but they'll continue to choose to live here. We have a lot of retirees. We've made a lot of lists about a great place to retire if you have $1 million. We have all the redundant broadband going on now. Unless something really serious happens to you, you can get medical treatment of about any kind here. You know, the heart, the cancer, having babies. And there's multiple options for doing that. So I think healthcare is always big, and we have that checked. Commercial and retail, we have a strong presence with that, but I just don't think we can get satisfied. I don't think, and I really am a believer you're either growing or you're shrinking. And I wasn't hired to shrink the place. And so we've really focused on growing it and keeping it affordable and not losing its soul. It's Pittsburgh. It's a special place. It's been here for 150 years. But everything has to change a little bit to stay alive and grow. And that's, I think, our biggest challenge is, what do we want to be as a community in 5, 10, and 50 years? We're building a wastewater treatment plant. It's going to be there for 50 years. That doesn't happen very often, but that's a commitment to this region and being able to make sure that the feds and everybody allows us to operate and continue to have housing growth and have people here in a safe manner. And so those things are really important. Those are the things we look at.
You mentioned retirees. One of the big issues for a lot of retirees is transportation, and that's a challenge in every city, big and small. Have you seen any places that have done it really well? And what do you think about Pittsburgh? What are the opportunities there?
We're kind of blessed and cursed with our size. We don't have the numbers for a true transit system that was highly effective. Like when I was in Kansas City, we had the transit authority, and you have a tax that buys buses, and you hire people, and the town's huge, and you drive 321 square miles. You know, we're so small that depending on who you are, it's real easy to get around. But if you can't afford transportation, I mean, you're definitely not going to take an Uber. There's a small taxi service, I think. I don't want to get in an argument with anybody. Somebody correct me one day and said, there's taxi here. I'm like, I get it. But the challenge is that the transit system we do have, all the grant funding and things that we've always built those programs on in Pittsburgh, because we were, very poor community and had health issues. We were really high on those two scales, and we were available. It was good for it made it possible for us to get grant money. Well, the federal government and the focus on shrinking the federal government, those are the kind of things that dry up. And when they do, we're looking at a transit bus route that we paid for a couple years ago that was 25 or 30,000, and this year it's 40,000. Well, in a time where we've got city leaders right now that are like, we want to really kind of confine our growth and look at what we're doing and really restrict the need to raise taxes to pay for stuff. That's the pinch point. How are you going to move people around that don't have enough money to afford a car and need the transit system? But if you're trying to cut the budget, how do you pay for the increased cost of the transit system? So those are things that we need to work on. Those are things we need to have conversations about, and those are things where I need to do a good job explaining to the commission and the staff and the community what our options are and the situations that we're in. But there's nothing more important for me than making sure that if somebody wants to get from point A to B in this town, they're not stuck at home. As a kid, that I can remember being stuck at home when I was 12 and 13 and none of my siblings around to give me a ride. And it's a rotten feeling. Imagine if you're 40 or 50 and you need to get your medicine, or you need to go visit a friend in the hospital, or you just need to go have dinner with your kids and you don't have a way to get around. So it's a real problem, and it exists, but solutions are out there. But like I said, life is just getting expensive, and it's hard to fund all that through the government.
In your years here, I can't imagine there aren't one or two things in the back of your head that you really wish we could do, but had never been possible. Is there something that you would really love to see happen for Pittsburgh?
Well, they won a football championship the year before I got here. And all I heard was, we're going to win 4 in a row. And they didn't do it one since. I feel like I'm a jinx on that. But in all seriousness, people are struggling. And I talk about those two categories where there's problems that are Pittsburgh's, and then there's problems that are just in the nation. And the national problems, it's hard to fix those. But we've seemed to come up with a Pittsburgh version for a lot of things in this town. The Buffalo Wild Wings is a funny example. We did a retail study, and they came back and said, well, here's some of the restaurants you could get because of your size, and here are the ones you really can't get. And Buffalo Wild Wings was above the line. But we had a contact, and I think Blake or somebody made some calls, and they said, we're just going to build one that's the size that Pittsburgh needs, and we'll see if it works. And 14 years later, they're like, we love this store. We're never going to close it because it's complemented by all the other stores that they have in the region, or excuse me, in their family of stores. But it's something we got because we needed something in Pittsburgh, and it's unique for Pittsburgh. I think there's a lot of solutions like that are Pittsburgh unique, but they're just they're hard to. I always hate to identify philanthropy because they're always so proud and they're so humble at the same time. They're always right there and they're like, don't mention me. But philanthropy has done some unbelievable things in this community. And the things that I wanted to see done that we couldn't really do, some of them have been done because of philanthropy. The mausoleum out of the cemetery, that thing was, when we inherited that cemetery, that thing was in bad shape, and there was no way we had tax money to fix that. But somebody stepped in and said, hey, I went to a funeral out there. I was embarrassed for the family and the city. I'm going to put some money into this thing. If you go out there now, that place is gorgeous. So there's certain things that I would like to name, but I won't because I don't want to act like we're too poor to have them because we've obviously shown that there's really nothing that we want that we can't have, from the Bicknell Center to the FedEx. I think the FedEx Center is named the Joplin FedEx Center because it was supposed to go in Joplin, but we competed. We have that beautiful state-run casino, and it has a lot of entertainment options for people. Those are things I never thought we'd get. And when the commission said, hey, we want you to go try to get that casino, we battled for it, and we competed for it, and we got sued for it, but we ended up getting it. And those things are all worth it. But I don't feel like Pittsburgh's a place to list a bunch of things we're missing. I think there's an endless amount of things we can continue to add. But for me, it's just as simple as, I know there's people in this town that sleep on the floor, kids. I know people have it tough. I know there's families that are struggling to feed their family. I wish we could get more help from the state on allowing us to kind of keep that property tax down. Because I mean, everybody wants to keep it down or go away, but without another revenue stream, it funds police and fire and administration. It just funds three of the biggest things that you have to have. So I don't think anybody wants us to reduce police and fire, and we're just at the point where we are going to continue to lean in on our partners and build amenities and take care of the stuff we have for the people that are here, and hopefully some more people keep coming, and hopefully the people that are here stay.
Kind of to that end, when you're out in the state, a lot of folks have never been in Pittsburgh. We're not on the way to a lot of places. So when you go out in the state and you tell them about Pittsburgh, how do you describe it?
Oh, I always say it's wonderful. I mean, I've been fortunate to be on the state's leadership for Kansas Cities for the last 15 years. And they know Pittsburgh. One of the reasons the commission wanted me to be on that board because I worked my way up to president, and there's a lot of conference advantages to being president. They come to Pittsburgh. And now when we talk about things and teach seminars, Pittsburgh's a model. People are blown away at how much growth has happened in Pittsburgh. When they come here to visit, they're always, even if they used to be a college student, they're always like, wow, it's changed so much, And we're here every day, so I don't really even think about it anymore. But the state knows what a jewel Pittsburgh is, and it's always, it's a proud moment for me because I know when I got here, so I would hear some of the things that people would say about Pittsburgh, and when I was moving down here, they were like, oh, you're going to Pittsburgh, and it's like, it's like almost like, wow, I guess things aren't working out for you, you're going to Pittsburgh, and I was like, just wait. Because I had been down here and I said this place is a jewel. But the university just by itself is so well respected statewide. If you drive around, my brother lives in Johnson County, the rest of them are in Topeka. There's little gorillas and statues all over yards up there in Johnson County of Penn State grads. It's a very, very prideful group of people. And it has a great reputation, and it just keeps growing. Every president that we get seems to be just as good as the last one, and we don't lose any traction there, and they all have a vision. So I think Pittsburgh in general is seen as a booming economy. I think people know that we're holding our own against the other four state cities. I think people know that we're growing. I think people understand that it's a great place to spend time. And I think most importantly, the best thing that I can say about Pittsburgh is when I talk to economic people around the state, they always say, hey, I know so-and-so from Pittsburgh, and we worked with them on a deal, and we ended up doing this down there. Man, that's a really cool community, and I don't know how you guys are pulling out. I saw that new KBI center's going. How'd you guys land that? It's just exciting to hear that you don't have to really go talk about it as much as just respond to them talking about it, and it's a good feeling, and it's because everybody down here, I think, is work their tails off and enjoys living out here and not afraid to say it.
Well, Daron, we've covered all the questions I had. Is there anything on your mind or anything that you wish people knew that you think they don't?
Well, I think the first thing I think people need to understand, and I think a lot of them do, but I would never want to do something like this without saying it, is the level of work that we get out of our employees is unbelievable. I mean, one reason I fight so hard for raises and to make sure that the budget has money to pay them and that we do pay studies is because they're all underpaid. I don't know anybody that's ever come to me and said, I'll make it enough. Everybody works their tail off. And the best comment I get is people are amazed that we only have 300 employees and we get all of these things done. We run an airport, we run water, sewer, wastewater, complete police and fire, a huge economic development operation. We have a housing department. When I got here, we had one person, Dina Hallisey, bless her heart, was doing housing, and she was doing a great job. Now it's an entire department. We've got developers from all over the country that come in here and look to do things. We've expanded our industrial park. That's because the employees we have, whether they're department heads, whether they're shift supervisors, whether they're men and women that are on the ground, turning the wrenches and stuff, they work safe. They work together, and one of our number one goals of the city is if you call the city, you don't have to know what department you need. We should all be able to just make it seamless for you. You should get the help you need. So from the people at the front desk to every other phone number, we're always working on the website, and we're doing, Stephanie's doing a huge website upgrade right now. We have an amazing group of employees, and they make it all happen. I mean, I get to sit here and talk to you and be like, yay, this is great, but I've had plenty of jobs where I didn't get anything done because I never had anybody, or maybe I was the problem, but you're only as good as the people you have. And we've spent a lot of time putting in levels of hiring so people can promote up and not have to leave the city. And we've really tried to retain the people because that knowledge of what a city is important. But I mean, our employees are the magic of the city, and they always have been. And we've been blessed with good leadership. I mean, I've been here through 7 elections. So, the commissioners come and go. None of the commissioners that hired me are here. Some of the commissioners that are here I've worked with for 8, 10, 12 years. But, there's a lot of different parts of the community. And so with every election, you get new commissioners. But they all have the best interest of the city at hand. They all really appreciate the employees as much as I do, and they support them. And they've been very forthcoming with, I can't emphasize good, safe equipment enough. When you have a fleet of vehicles that when you get in it and you turn the key, it's going to start and take you on your code call or on your police call or across town for your meeting. The car is going to work, it's going to be safe. We've been able to keep investing in our skid steers and all of our pumps at the different plants that we have. That all comes from the commission's leadership and their ability to understand that it's an expensive business. When I got here, the budget was $47 million. It's $72 million now. There's a lot of things that we do that we didn't used to do, and everything we do is more expensive than how we used to do it because life's just expensive. But the people make it work. I'm proud of them. I'm glad they are safe, and I'm glad that they're committed. And we try to give them training, and we try to give them safe equipment, and we try to get out of their way and let them do their thing. And I think it's reflected in how the town works.
Well, Daron, I appreciate you taking some of your busy day to visit with us, and we do appreciate it.
Well, best of luck on the series, and thanks for letting me go early on so I wasn't compared to anybody when I went. But I think it's going to be a success. And more, I do want to thank the paper. The paper's done an unbelievable job of having kids that came through the athletic department, being able to see them in the paper, plus watching the things that the city do in the paper, and understanding that a community needs a paper. And the fact that you guys have really put together one that we can be proud of regardless of how big the community is says a lot about our commitment to our message and wanting people to understand that they live in a great place and we should be telling people about it. Thanks, Ron.
How do we do?